We begin this hour like we always begin the hours with the day's proverb by C.T. Muga.
Can a dog eat a bone? A hyena has been defeated to eat.
Can a dog eat a bone? A hyena has been defeated to eat. Good question. This is from Western Kenya.
Western Kenya.
Yeah. Read it in Western.
All right. Here I go. Please forgive me, those who understand this language and who subscribe to it. I'm going to do the best I can.
You're not Western educated.
Inculcated more like it. Okay. Eshikumba shihaya ifisi mana imbwa yaha nyala. Let me repeat it. Eshikumba shihaya ifisi mana imbwa yaha nyala.
I've had fisi, I've had mbwa. So I can.
I've had nyala.
And nyala. What is nyala?
How am I supposed to know?
Haya is the mala fisi, mala mbwa, nyala. Can a hyena, can a dog break a bone that a hyena hasn't been unable to?
Eat.
Can a dog eat a bone
Yes.
that a
Dogs
hyena
eat
has
bones.
been unable to?
It's very interesting that you picked that proverb when I was coming to the studio.
Exactly.
Because I also I'm from Western.
But
Voila.
this was,
I
this
like
was strategic
I
timing.
like when you use the word he's not Western educated.
Yeah. Our guest this hour is a Western educated, Western bred, Western cultured guest. His name is Ebenezer Amadi. He's a program manager for sustainable inclusive business at the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. I'm trying to look for a Western word. Okay, it's okay. FEC.
The thing
Now,
that you would have
pronounced,
said is the thing that you have said is it's because it's morning. You'd have said Oriana,
Oriana.
Malay. So it's one thing you can write in your diary. So next time
Oriana.
someone comes,
That greeting I know.
That one you, at
That
least
I'm,
that one you've come
that I'm
across.
familiar with.
That one you know.
Yes.
or if you come from, we have different dialects. If you come from Maragoli, you say Ovendi,
Yes.
Be Muramu.
Okay. So when you heard CT
Yes.
reading that proverb, which dialect is that?
It could be Nyore, the Nyore people there. The way he was pronouncing it, it sounded rich.
Yeah.
And he felt like a wise man was speaking.
Hey.
How would you say it yourself?
This ego today. We will not rest. We will never
Do
rest
not.
again.
What was that proverb about praising the wise? Making your own path for the wise.
No.
The greatness.
Those who those who acknowledge the great, the deeds of the great. Chart. I'm paraphrasing.
Yes.
Chart the pathway for their own greatness.
For their own greatness.
Yes.
You see.
That's what Ebenezer is doing.
Wisdom.
That's what Ebenezer
see
is
you,
doing.
Ebenezer.
Charting your own path to greatness.
Wisdom.
Welcome. It's good to have you in the show.
Thank you so much.
We've had you in the show before, but you've always just been joining us virtually.
Yeah.
Finally, you're here.
Finally, I'm here and I get to sit to next to the wise man. I get to sit next to the lady and
across this
and
guy.
across this, looking at you,
This guy.
controlling the studio.
Right.
And I was just saying that you should have told me that you have a turntable here. I would have come with some music
You'd have
to
come
entertain.
kitted.
Yes, to entertain your listeners and your viewers.
Don't worry.
We actually put the decks there because we are discussing circular economy. So we thought circular economy has something to do with you spinning the discs.
Nice one.
We put the thing there
It's
for
just
you.
for you.
It's
Just for you.
Yeah. It's
This is a nice theme to have while talking about circular economy.
So let's start with definitions. You'll tell us about circular economy, but let's start with what is sustainable inclusive business?
Sustainable Inclusive Business is a program under the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. The Kenya Private Sector Alliance is an umbrella body of the private sector in Kenya. And the Kenya Private Sector Alliance does, if you break it down, two things. One is looking at policy influences, so basically that's advocacy, and ensuring that there is an enabling environment for the private sector to operate. So things to do with taxes, things to do with regulations, policies that are there that possibly could have some bottlenecks. So we look at the gaps that exist. Also listen to our members, which is the private sector. So we have two categories of members. We have the business membership organization, then we have corporates. Now, under the different path where I was talking about on social inclusion, we have projects. And Sustainable Inclusive Business is one of the programs. And we like to call it the Knowledge Center, because it started off as a project and then it will transition. Because when you talk about sustainability, we also want to be sustainable.
Yourselves.
So you don't preach water.
And drink wine.
Yeah, I was about to say the opposite, so I was looking at CT. So Sustainable Inclusive Business basically champions the adoption of practices that then ensure sustainability. And when I was talking about sustainability the other time in the show, I mentioned that you can look at it in two different ways. So meeting your short-term and long-term obligations, so money, and then also looking at the environment. How are you interacting with your environment, with the community that you live in? And of course, if you live near a community, then you'll find that most companies would like to involve the community around them. And that's why if a project is being started, then they will possibly do an environmental impact assessment to get to know how will this project affect the community. And then they will try and mitigate some of the risks that they see. They will also have a participation with the stakeholders to ask what do you see, what do you propose that we could do differently. And these studies are done, and you find that then NEMA, which is the regulator, gets to approve or say that possibly you need to do different things before you're able to implement. I remember at a time when I was working in the water sector, there was a dam that was supposed to be built in Nyamira, to South Nyamira in Kisii County. It was called the Bonyonyo Dam. So they needed to interact with the community. And you know, land in Kisii is it's
an emotive issue.
Yes. So I mean, the project at some point did stall because then you had to interact with the community, looking at issues of resettlement, issues of looking at, for example, if the floods, what happens. So those are some of the issues that then we look at. But most importantly, one of the things that we also talk about is looking at the contribution of meeting sustainable development goals, right? We moved from MDGs 2015, and then we're looking at SDGs. The other component is also looking at the contribution of the private sector to meeting the nationally determined contributions. So looking at greenhouse gas emissions, climate change. So those are the
basically
aspects.
plugging yourself into the global buzzwords.
No, I wouldn't call it the buzzwords, because this is the reality we live in.
Right.
Yeah.
So as this organization, is it then taking the lead or being a thought leader and clearly action leader then when it comes to this, because nobody else is having the conversation, or we'd like to move things along a lot quicker in terms of sustainability? That's part one of the question. Part two is then, are we looking at sustainability of these businesses, or are we looking at sustainability of resources, or does it cut across board?
Good questions there. So one of the things that we are a facilitator. So we bring people together. We're not saying that people are not having this conversation. People are having these conversations. But the other thing is that, are we taking action? That's the question. So what we do is we facilitate conversations, we facilitate dialogue, and then we also support the businesses to assess their processes. So looking at are you having the components of sustainability within your strategy and processes? You talked about, are we looking at the sustainability of the businesses themselves? Yes. That's where, if you look at the 3 Ps, that's people, planet, and profit.
Right.
Profit looks at the business. Are they able to sustain themselves beyond 1 year? You've looked at the study that shows that most SMEs fail between 5 to 10 years. and we can have a complete
cold
discussion
debate on this.
on that. There are different things that contribute to that. For example, if a business starts small, possibly, let me use a wise man. Let's say CT was my father, for example. He started a business, and then he introduced me to the business. So this is a family business. So we have a way of operating the business, and possibly we are not careful on looking at the corporate governance structure, right? Decision making, having systems. So I can wake up and say, I feel like going to Cape Town. Finance manager,
Set it up.
so you're draining the business.
You're taking money from the business.
From a business. It's basically like if you're having a shop and then you start consuming the stock instead of looking at the profit. So you're supposed to be taking a percentage of your profits. So those are some of the issues that if you take a case study of some of the businesses that have shut down, that we have known them to be very big organizations. I won't mention names, but being people in the media, you can guess some of the businesses.
They ate the seed.
They ate the seed.
And that's so sustainable business, inclusive business then is looking at how you can remain relevant as a business, sustain yourself as a business, and also how you can sustain the community that you're working with, all your stakeholders.
Correct.
Summarized well.
And then you add in one component, the environment.
The environment.
Yes.
So it's the stakeholders, the people, the environment,
Yes.
and of course the bottom line of the organization.
Yes.
So then circular economy. What's that all about?
So circular economy is an interesting topic that I will say is not really new in Africa. We have had this concept for a long time. It's only that we possibly have shifted a little bit. If I take an example of how people used to just didn't buy fertilizer, they will use cow dung, put it at some point, then it will almost like see it's degrading.
Compost and all.
Yeah, and then now they scoop it and take it to the farm after it's a bit dry.
Yep.
Right, and then with the cow, they will, when they slaughter it, they will use the skin for clothes, right? The hooves, probably they'll get glue from it. The horns, they'll get to drink muratina from it. The head, possibly, if you like, soup.
Yep.
Yes.
The tail is a fly whisk.
Yes. So everything out of that cow is used. And so the concept there is that you're trying to reduce the waste. Right, so everything will be used. Funny thing is that even the intestines can make mutura.
Yep.
And you will think that most people don't like mutura, but I think it's some joints I won't mention. I see some Range Rovers parked, and they bring the mutura. So they don't want to be seen eating the mutura, but they enjoy the delicacy.
You know, sausages are loved the world over.
Yeah.
Whether you want to call them mutura,
whatever name you give
it, but they're loved
Sausage
the
is a
world
sausage.
over. A sausage is a sausage.
Right. So you're talking about then being able to use one material to the best or the most of its capacity so that nothing goes to waste.
Yes.
So how does that then play out in our current economy with businesses? And of course, that big word, recycle, then comes into play. And so what is the encouragement then for businesses when it comes to recycling? We've seen the whole plastic conversation in Kenya, around the world, plastic and the damage when it has not been done away with properly, and the damage that it can then cause to the environment. Are we looking at this circular business then happening in those areas as well?
Yes, we are looking at that. The best example I can use is this turntable, right? That's here with us. It's made of different components. We have wires, we have plastic, right? We have different components that make this turntable. And when this product gets faulty, instead of throwing it away, one of the things we can do is to repair. Once you have repaired it several times and it's again not functioning, you could possibly take it to someone who can refurbish, put in some new components, and then take it back to the market. the other thing that you will also do with this is to take it apart and use some of the pieces that are still working well, and possibly now use it to refurbish
Something else.
Something else.
Another turntable.
Yes. If you get to the end of the life of this product, when it's no longer working and you've taken it apart, you can then recycle bits and pieces. You have the metal, right? You have the plastic, you have the cables. So you can be able to recycle those components once you take them apart. Now, the circularity bit in Kenya, where we're talking about a transition from a linear to circular, basically we're saying, don't just make a product, you use it, it's at the end of life and you throw it. We're saying we keep it longer in the market, right? So the other component, when you're talking about plastics, it's a different discussion, because people have been using plastic for convenience and also for hygiene. I see the wise man has come. Is there? Oh, okay, all of you have your
You have our thermal cups.
yeah. So ideally, what you're trying to do is reducing the waste that goes into the environment, and that's why we're also having a conversation of companies that then produce plastics to look at different avenues to reduce this waste going into the environment. One of the things that they will do is to look at innovative products that then, if they introduce to the market, it's easy for you to either recycle it, you can either reuse it, and the last point that you can also look at in innovation is a product that could be biodegradable, right? So if it's thrown away, it does not then stay for 100 years in the environment. And that's why we have this conversation of the Kenya Plastics Pact being established in Kenya. The laws in Kenya, we have a regulation, the Extended Producer Responsibility Regulation, that then guides the sectors to form producer responsibility organizations. Basically means you're using the polluter pays principle. So a producer that introduces a product to the market is responsible for it post-consumption.
Okay.
Basically means that if you establish a PRO, we are a sector, you have a company, same to you and same to you, and then we have come together, we establish a PRO, you will all be paying a membership fee, an annual membership fee. And then I'll be looking at what are the numbers you're introducing to the market, what are the quantities of the products you're introducing to the market, and how much then do we want to collect and recycle.
Okay.
So you'll be paying me, so it's more or less like you're transferring your obligation, and then I do the job and give you the numbers. So
Of collecting it from the market,
yes,
post-use.
Post-use.
Okay.
Then we also work together with informal waste speakers. They play a huge role in Kenya. We also work with the recyclers. So all these players then contribute to having the circular model adopted into the subsector.
You know, we'll talk about this after the break, because like you're saying, the law has its own mandate and requirements, and then organizations themselves taking it upon themselves to see how best to make sure that their products are not just going to spoil the environment after they've been used, but they end up being put into good use or being disposed of correctly. There's a lot that is happening in that entire value chain, in terms of you'd expect that you'll have now the support of the local authorities who are in charge of managing garbage collection and garbage disposal. There is the responsibility of the user, and the user knowing that this is where I'm going to take this particular garbage, so then you can come and collect on behalf of the organizations that have given you that mandate. You'll explain that to us. So how do we make sure that this circular economy is actually a complete circle and not just a curve that ends up somewhere and it's lost? Kenya's biggest conversation continues. We are talking about the circular economy in a sustainable inclusive business. Today we'll be commemorating the 6th annual Sustainable Inclusive Business Conference, and Ebenezer Amadi is a program manager for Sustainable Inclusive Business at the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. That's the conversation that we are having. Circular economy, like you've explained to us, Amadi, is where the producer ensures that they still take responsibility for what they produced until after use, and to see that it's not thrown away, but it's put into either better use or it's recycled properly, or it's even disposed of properly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's making sure that that cycle is complete.
Yeah, that's why it's called the circular.
That's
economy.
circular
So-
economy.
So basically, if you look at the different approaches, so we have the linear economy.
Yep.
Basically, it's a straight line. So you produce a product, you use it, and you dispose.
Yep.
So it's straight. There's no loop. Now, the circular economy, there's a loop because you're also trying to increase the lifespan of a product in the
Okay.
market. So by using it, reusing it, refurbishing, then you get to the point possibly you're getting these pieces apart. You could also recover energy
Okay.
out of it. So the items or components that possibly go as waste should be very minimal.
So you reduce.
Yes.
Aren't we mimicking, Amadi, a model that was previously the case? So are we essentially saying, let's go back to the way in which we used to do things almost
back full
pre-industrialization? So that could be circular economy, in that we are going back full circle, the way we used to do things before.
Basically, what you're trying to say is that, and it's interesting how you normally use proverbs from before. It's because you're trying to hold on to the wisdom of the wise men.
You know, the French actually understood it very well. And they said that the more things change, the more things remain the same.
Plus ça change, plus ça la même chose.
Shows, yes.
Oui.
So, I mean, what you say and what you envision can actually work, so long as those who partner with you in realizing this can see and understand how they will benefit from it.
Yeah. And the benefits there could be in different ways. Could be in monetary terms, which normally
Monetary usually works
motivates
well.
motivates people.
Yes, and it motivates highly.
Number one.
Yes.
Then the other thing is looking at how your environment looks like, right? That could be another motivation, because you also want to live in a clean environment.
Yeah.
But number one is the money.
You want to live in a clean environment when you have money.
If you don't have money, you probably don't really care.
Yeah, so that's a motivation factor, and that's how we look at how the business model works. If you look at the entire value chain, so you have to look at the value chain and look at the areas where you will be able to star for people to be motivated, especially starting from the point where you're able to collect these items from the household level. That's where we talk about the separation of waste at source. So where the waste is generated. So if you're generating your waste from home, then possibly then we need to increase your understanding of the separation and why it's important. And then after you've separated it, where can you take some of those products and also actually redeem? If it's a plastic, if it's a metal, if it's a paper, you get compensated. We were having a discussion with one of the private sector players that we're working with the different projects that we're implementing. So what they're doing is they have a waste management company in Mombasa. And then I've actually realized the more they tell people that you can pick the plastic and sell it, now they're putting it aside and selling it to recyclers. So when you go and pick the trash, you're not finding plastic.
There's no plastic in the trash.
Yeah. If you're finding it, possibly it's those that just sneaked its way in. So they actually have to tell them, please keep the plastic for us, because they want to take it and recycle it.
Actually, if you go to any dump site in this country, you will find people who are always
They're called scavengers.
Yep.
yes, but it's not empty scavenging. It's very purposed.
Yeah.
They know exactly what they're looking for, and you can actually see them segregating
Yeah.
whatever it is they find, because there is a market for the things that you see them supposedly scavenging.
Yeah.
They know and they understand. And the reason why they endure all that filth and all that stench is because at the end of all that, there is some monetary gain.
True.
Yes.
True.
Now, which is where I was raising the issue before we went to the break. You see, all those motivation factors and motivation points are along the value chain, like you've said. But not everybody has the same motivation. So we've started with the manufacturer. The manufacturer of this product has introduced it to the market. Market, all ordinary user has bought it. User has finished the use of whatever they bought, and then they need to dispose it. Now, the other players in this, like you said, are the formal and informal garbage companies. And then there are now the recycling organizations on the other end. Now, the recycling organizations could be creating the demand for the garbage company so that you go, separate, bring. But we don't see that happen often. The garbage companies that are licensed by the city county of Nairobi, for example, their job is one, collect garbage, take it to Dandora. And then now you're introducing somebody else there to go and start separating this garbage at that point to take it to the recycler. The recycler is not recycling for everything. They're not looking at reusing immediately. So I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in this value chain for this circular economy to basically complete that loop. And I'm seeing the gaps. The gaps that I see are with the authorities, the county governments around the country. Those are the ones who are in charge of the garbage collection points. They're the ones who are in charge of the landfills. They're the ones who are taking care of that. They're the ones who are in charge of licensing that recycling
Basically,
company.
it's a devolved function.
Yes. So if those are not playing ball, then this whole conversation that is happening at KEPSA and at the manufacturer level will end there. And the manufacturer, because they don't see this thing working, it becomes a bigger headache. And my main job is to produce. I'll pay the person that you said, the PRO. The PRO goes and handles it. PRO gets frustrated along the chain. They dump the garbage and circle broken.
And that's why you have to look at the entire value chain. That's why we're having this conversation of establishing the Kenya Plastics Pact. Now we have the PROs that you have mentioned that are anchored on the regulation, EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility Regulation 2021. Which will be mandatory for companies now to join the schemes. It's called the Extended Producer Responsibility Scheme. Now, under the Kenya Plastic Pact, we are a facilitator and a platform that brings together different platforms. We talked about sector players working in isolation. So we are encouraging the sector players to come together, and that's why the membership of the Kenya Plastic Pact will consist of the companies that produce these items. So we call them the brands. Then we'll also have the recyclers, and then we will also have a different category that we are calling the supporters. So the supporters include the business membership organizations, NGO, civil society organization, and researchers, because research also plays a key role in terms of looking at opportunity for investment, problems and bottlenecks within the value chain. So that can fit into the roadmap that will develop in terms of where do we want to be in the next 5 years from now. Under the Kenya Plastic Pact, we have a number of targets which are informed by the sector in terms of looking at where the country wants to be. You will realize that the recycling of plastic is at 9%, and with the Kenya Plastic Action Plan, it's envisioned that the country is supposed to move to a recycling capacity of about 30% by 2030. If you look at the percentages, you'll think it's a very small number, but if you look at the volume of plastic that's supposed to be recycled, then you'll also start to think about the capacity to recycle, capacity in terms of innovation, technology to recycle these products. Now, the Pact, again, the other thing that it does, it's also an avenue to cross-learn. So peer learning, so companies learning from each other in terms of the new innovations that the peers are using, in terms of the packaging itself, recycling, and also going forward, looking at the benchmarking with different countries, so at the global level.
Benchmarking, Ebenezer, tell me, when you talk of recycling, if you look at the global market, those entities that are responsible for producing plastics, do we find that they're the same ones who are involved in recycling? Or is recycling a completely separate business from producing plastics?
So other companies then are involved in the recycling and collection and recycling of plastics, but others then work with recyclers, because again, your main business is producing your good and selling it. So if you start diversifying and say you're going into recycling, that's basically possibly could be a subsidiary company, right? So if you look at
And what is wrong with having that subsidiary company? After all, you manufacture it, the recycled product is of use to you.
there's nothing wrong with that, and that's why the extended producer responsibility provides for that. So you can have an individual company have its own mechanism to recycle its own product. That's one option. The other option is to collectively form a PRO, and then the PRO then collects those products and ensure that it's recycled.
You know what I'm thinking of? I'm thinking of East African Breweries Limited. We all know they produce alcohol, okay? But at some point they figured out, you know something, we bottle these things. Why don't we just manufacture the bottles ourselves? Makes perfect sense. It's not as though they want other people who manufactured bottles. They were. And then, if you look at the market segmentation, there's the understanding. And there's one particular organization that I think understood this thing better than most. I'm not advertising for them, it's just a fact. They're called Coca-Cola. You know why I'm saying this, huh? They understood the concept of a beverage, not necessarily a soft drink, just beverage. So competition for them doesn't have to be something that is a sweet beverage. So long as it's a beverage, if it's water, if it's a juice, it's competition. So you'll find that they diversified their products to accommodate this particular understanding. Now, when it comes to manufacturers of plastic, thinking of that same logic, would it not make sense, a lot more sense, if they wanted to benefit from this? Because they're clearly saying there's benefit in it. But if their participation is predominantly in producing and not in the recycling, or they leave that to other people, then I personally do not feel that their commitment to this recycling, I consider it to be more verbal than it is actually real.
Actually, when you mention about Coke is one of our members of the Kenya Plastic Pact. So what you say is true in terms of each company could have its own initiative, and there are companies have had that initiative because you have Petco as a company that has been dealing with doing the voluntary phase. Petco is also one of our members to collect PET bottles, right? You know, there are different kind of plastics. So the PETs. So that's what they deal with, and they have a number of companies that then have joined hands to be able to work together. So it's a matter of synergy and removing the element of duplication of efforts. Because if we were all producers and we are going to collect items from,
so you can come and start, recycling our own.
Are we going to the trash can and only finding my product called Amadi?
Right.
So when I say CT, Eric, no.
It
Amadi,
becomes
yes.
easier, for example, for a soda company, because you consume, you give the bottle back, and so it's easier for them to collect as well. It's not going to the trash can. It's not like Heineken, for instance, that's selling internationally and then it has to end up elsewhere. The question I want to ask is, who are we talking about when you say that you have the responsibility? If you are a cooking oil company, manufacturing company, you put this in plastic containers. You don't produce the plastic. You buy the plastic from somebody else who produces the plastic, but the product that goes out to the market is branded under you. So whose responsibility is it? Is it the cooking oil manufacturer, or is it the one who sold the plastic to the cooking oil manufacturer?
It's a good question. And this is answered in the EPR regulation. So when you look at the definition of a producer, so the definition of a producer is not just the person who produces the container. It's actually also the person who introduces this product once they have packaged it into their their commodity. I mean, if you talk about marketing, then a product could be in different terms. A service is also a product. Right?
Yeah.
So once you have been able to package your product, then you're also considered
A producer.
because you're introducing
You're the one
this.
who's bringing this
You're introducing it to
complete
the
thing
market.
Okay.
Yes. So that's how it answers that question, because then even supermarkets nowadays have begun to package, let's say, sugar. You'll see water,
Yeah.
and they brand it with their name. So would you say that person is not a producer? They are, because they're doing the similar thing. A separate company will be doing and bringing this product to the market to sell. So that's why the definition had to be included in the regulation.
Where do communities, individuals, the very basic social unit, where do they fall in all of this, playing a role? Because likely the consumers are not clearly, and not just, the people who, or rather the organizations that are in these pacts. They are the consumers of the product from which you want to get this material that will then be, number one, recyclable, collectible, that falls then in this spectrum. How do they play a role? How do we play a role in all of this?
We play a big role because we're the people who consume the product and then throw away the packaging, either out the window or put it somewhere. And we were doing a study in different countries, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Malawi, and also in Kenya. And we noticed that there are people who are keen to separate waste at source. But the question they ask themselves, once I separate, the person who comes to pick it puts it again
in the same bin.
Yes.
Yeah, they mix it.
So they're wondering, I mean, what is it? What is my contribution after I've separated? So you have to ensure that in awareness creation, you look at the entire value chain. So the person who is generating the waste, the person who is picking it, and then the person who is coming to collect, so that you're able to. It's more or less like a ripple effect. So you're creating an impact along the value chain. So we play a major role, and it's very important for awareness creation to the public. Right. And that's why, as KEPSA, we have been working closely with the Ministry of Environment and Forestry to be able to increase the awareness on what the regulation talks about. That's a sensitization. And you'll realize just before COVID hit, they wanted to go around the country and actually have the focal group discussions in every county. But it was a bit difficult again when COVID hit. Right. So they turned it into virtual. But at least now they're trying to
How's
do a
that
mix.
working, the virtual communication around the counties?
It's sometimes it's a bit tricky, to be honest.
And who are the people you wanted in these groups, on these focus group discussions?
The common mwananchi.
I mean, when I say common, let me see what I mean.
Person who throws away trash.
The one
Person who
throws
uses
away-
trash.
Uses trash.
Okay, then how do you decide? Is it a community leader? Is it a community voice? Is it somebody who's an influencer? How do you... What I'm asking is, was it a random sampling of people within the community, or are you targeting specifically, or are you going to mix all these people? Meaning one meeting for elders, one meeting for youth leaders? How are you going
It's
to do
generally
it?
supposed to be together, because if you look at when you conduct a stakeholder analysis, you'll group them,
Yes,
right? And in Kenya, then you'll realize that your elected leader, they normally say, is supposed to represent your views, right? So they also have a role to play in terms of having this discussion with you and breaking down the regulation to you, listening to you, and then representing your views.
They don't usually do a very good job of that. That's unfortunately that the reality.
So we're talking about the ideal situation.
That isn't ideal.
That's how it's supposed to be. That's how it's supposed to be.
If you really want to understand what people think, the idea that you had originally is what really works, because you will actually get to hear.
Like a baraza, like
Yes.
a public
Absolutely.
baraza.
Yes, because you know you're talking about people who use plastics.
Yeah.
If you go to rural areas, people don't throw plastics.
Yes.
They actually use them. This
They
bottle,
reuse.
they do.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
They keep it, they reuse it.
You're actually right, because when we conducted the study, we found the difference between the high income areas and the low income areas. So in the low income areas, some of the items you don't find them in trash, because we were taking the bags. So we give them to community and tell them, fill it with your trash. And then we collect it after a week. And then we try, and it's called a characterization of waste. So looking at what are the components in this waste. So in some areas, you don't find some things. So you'll think, these people don't use more of these things. But the reason could be that they have seen that there is value in selling these products.
Yeah.
So they don't throw it away, as you said.
You know,
Or they reuse
And
it.
they
They
use
reuse
it.
them, you
Yeah.
actually do
Anytime
It's a container
I-
for one thing or the other.
Yeah, I attend a funeral in the rural areas. These days, many funeral people will give you some form of bottled water.
Yeah.
Okay?
Some form.
There are people who judiciously collect those bottles. So you will not find bottles strewn all over the place. You will not find it. And I always ask, so what do you use it for? And they'll give you a list of things that they use the bottles for.
You know, one of the
Including-
things that they can do is
Selling it.
could be selling it. And the other thing is, when you're going to refill your cooking oil,
Yes.
you need a container, because nowadays there are people who have a dispenser for either cooking oil,
Yes.
or it could be milk, or it could be water.
Yep.
So they actually reuse these products by going and refilling it. It's actually a good model, because then it teaches us to not just use the containers and throw
even
it.
when it cracks, I found there are people who will seal it for you. They know it's plastic. They'll find some way of sealing that small crack.
Yes.
That-
Using
that-
plastic.
Yes, that thing is
leave alone.
utilized to the nth.
Leave alone plastic. Have you ever seen a sufuria that has been fixed
Yes,
Yes.
I have.
and it doesn't leak?
No, it doesn't.
It cooks ugali really well.
And there are people who know how to use this to come and actually mend and go round.
Yes.
Ebenezer, thank you very much for joining us today. So the Kenya Plastics Pact will be launched today
Yeah.
at a live event that will be on KTN News. And among the guests will include the CS for Environment and Forestry, Keriaka Tobiko, Karo Kariuki of KEPSA, Ambassador Henriette Geiger of the European Union to Kenya, Martin Brewer, the Ambassador of Netherlands to Kenya, the Project Director for Sustainable Inclusive Business, Karin Boomsma, Emily Waita, the Chair of Environment at KEPSA, Ebenezer Amadi, who is a Program Manager. You know this guy,
I
right?
think I know him.
Naftali Kobag, the entrepreneur, Coast Project beneficiary, Giuliani, the musician, artist, and environmentalist, Elizabeth Wathuti, founder, Green Generation Initiative. This will be live on KTN News from 10:30 a.m. up to 1 p.m. That's the launch of the Kenya Plastic Pact.
Yes.
Kenya Plastics
Pact.
Pact.
And it's this during our annual conference, which we are talking about is the 6th that we will be running. We have been doing others before. Particularly this year is very interesting, because we are going to launch the Kenya Plastics Pact. So we want to invite the businesses, the brands, to join the pact and join hands in terms of trying to create an impact in the sector.
I've got a business as we say goodbye to our audience. I have a complaint as we say goodbye to our audience on KTN Home. I don't see the consumers represented in this conversation
The consumers are represented.
by Giuliani.
Not necessarily, but every person in that
He's a consumer,
is
yes, but a consumer representative body.
So we actually, you will see Naftal is one of the people that is a beneficiary of the projects that we have at the coast.
Yeah.
So he'll also be giving us his view and
Okay.
what they are doing with this products and plastics. So that perspective will be brought out. And we will also be taking questions. It will be an interactive session, so
Okay.
we're asking you to register and join. Beyond watching it live on KTN, go to our handles as Sustainable Inclusive Business Kenya, Kenya Private Sector Alliance. You'll be able to see the link there. Follow us and also subscribe and register.
Thank
The
you.
Kenya Plastic Pact also has its handle on Twitter, as well as LinkedIn. So you can actually go and register and be a participant.
And follow
let's
it.
Thank you for having me here. And one last thing that I would like to mention is that within this initiative, we have partners. And one of our partners include Ellen MacArthur Foundation, RAP, which is Resource Action Program, as well as the Global Plastic Pact.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.